everyone. Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have something exciting today. My kids are old, but there's a new generation coming up for my family, which is great. But if your kids are young and you're thinking, Dave, I want an app for my kids to listen to podcasts for kids, but I don't want to send them to the big boys, all those other places, and I don't know what they're listening to. And I would love an app where I have curated podcasts for kids. I can trust the people who run the app, and I wish somebody would create this. Guess what? There is an app, and I have found them, and now the Daily Santa podcast is there, which I'm proud to say that my podcast is on this new app. But the creator of the app is here with us today, which makes me extremely happy because now we get to talk to somebody behind the scenes and and podcasters love this stuff. So this is going to be a really, really fun conversation. Rachel's here with me today. Rachel, welcome to the How to Podcast series. I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited to talk to you and to just discuss podcasting, especially for kids. It's my passion. I love it. So
this is so good.
I'm here for it.
So needed. Okay, I need you to do a commercial right off the bat for your app. Tell us about your app. Tell us all about it. Your time to shine. I'm sure you've had to do this in many presentations and talk to people about the app. When you're dreaming about this great new app, please let everybody know about this amazing app that everyone needs to go and download today.
Okay.
Come on.
So it's called KidsPod. You can download it today. It is free to download. I like to think of it as a children's library for podcasts. It's similar to if you walk to your local library, you're going to have a children's section. And we have taken all of the children's content, all of the best podcasts for kids, and put them into their own app. And we have curated it by themes, by categories, to make it as easy as possible for kids to access and discover new podcasts. We put a lot of thought into the UI design because we really want kids to intuitively be able to open it and find something interesting to them. I think about my own kids and I think how easy it is for them to be able to pop up Netflix or YouTube or whatever, and they can navigate it seamlessly and they can find what they want. Even my young kids can. And I was feeling frustrated that they couldn't do that for podcasting. I had to be the gatekeeper for podcasts. And my kids love podcasts, and they're so incredibly beneficial for kids. And I had to be the gatekeeper, and that was frustrating to me. So long story short, we created this app called KidsPod where kids are in the driver's seat. There's lots of beautiful images. They can scroll through intuitively. Like I said, we have a lot of categories. We have editors playlists where I compile a lot of different episodes based on themes. So like right now we have a whole bunch of holiday playlists that they can easily access and listen to. And then we also, so it's free. That's what I first and foremost want to say. It's free to download. Anybody can access it. That's very important to us. None of the content is behind a paywall. We do have a premium option, but you're not paying for additional content. You're paying for additional app features. And it's $3.99 a month, or I think it's $34.99 a year. And that's just for app features. Like I think there's an in-app coloring book. There's additional, you can make your own playlists, things like that. But we really just want users. So we're just pushing, download the app, try it out, give it a try, see what you think.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one thing I've heard people say many times in podcasting, and I'm speaking on behalf of them, because when I find a great app like yours, and I hear the word free, and if there was only free option, any business I've ever met, a restaurant, a bookstore, a music shop, whatever, if they gave everything away for free, they would be out of business very quickly. So I want to make sure that you guys have longevity. I need you to be here for a long, long time. And I love your app. So we want to make sure that you're making money, you're okay, and you have a plan to make this last for a long time. So please reassure us that as we go out and promote this to all of our podcaster friends and community, that you're going to be here in the future. You have a plan. You're okay. Like there's all that's in place, right?
Yeah. So we're currently in our first funding seed raise right now. And we have several different revenue streams. So the subscription base is only one, and it's a pretty small category on all our revenue streams. We're looking into looking at other creative partnerships and branding. We have some really exciting partnerships that we can't talk about yet, but I'm so excited to announce when we can. And ultimately, our goal is to get every kid that we can connected to podcasts. And so we're trying to remove the barriers. And if we can be that first stop for kids to be able to jump into the world of podcasting, that's what we want to be. So we want to be in the schools, in the hospitals, in the after-school programs, in the homeschooling. We want to be that place for kids. I know that podcasting for kids is growing, but I still don't think it's quite mainstream yet. Like, I think it's on its way. And I just want, like, my ultimate goal is to make podcasting as ubiquitous as something like a YouTube. Like, kids are tapped into the world of podcasting, because I know adults are. I mean, adults constantly swap stories about things they've listened to on podcasts, and kids can too. They just have had so many barriers to access. And so now creating their own app where they can safely access these shows, it just opens up a whole new world. But yes, we have a lot of different revenue streams. We have funding coming in. And so we are on the upward trajectory. Slow and steady growth. I mean, we are all bootstrapped and we're just slowly steady getting funding now. And we have, I think slow and steady is the name of the game for us. Yeah. We're still working out some bugs in the tech. I mean, we are non-tech founders, so that's tricky. we are learning a lot, but slow and steady. But we plan to be around for a long time. Yes.
Good. Okay. So when did the app launch?
Actually, just launched in this last summer. And it was mostly just an industry-wide launch. And since we have done just grassroots marketing, again, like I said, we're closing our first round of funding, and then we can start marketing it more. But up until now, we've just been sharing with friends and family and working out some of the bugs.
What are your future plans to get in front of more podcasters? What do you got on the
This
books?
Is a great question. This is something we care a lot about. We're hoping to create, up front at first, we're hoping to create swaps where if a podcaster mentions us in their show, we can promote their podcast on our platform. We have featured spots on the platform. We also can share in our newsletter and in our socials. So we're hoping to do a lot of collaborations with podcasters. We know that especially kids podcasters or parenting podcasts, that's where I think we're going to find our audience, obviously. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I totally just went blank. My mind just went blank. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Because there's so many places that host podcasting events.
Yes.
Podcast Movement.
We've been to Podcast Movement. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We've met a lot of really great kids podcasters. We love kid podcasters. And we've met a lot. So there's this, like, it's the same in the adult world, but there's massive podcast networks that carry the really big shows. And then there's independent podcasters that have the smaller audience that are so engaged and have a loyal following. And we want to be able to merge both, because I think you need both. And we don't want it to be just the big guys. We want to be able to allow the independent podcasters a place to be seen. And when you take, some of the bigger apps, you think there's millions and millions of episodes or podcasts on there. It's so hard to be seen, but we've whittled it down to, we have 600 podcasts on our app now. And so, wow. And then we've categorized it by subject. So your chance of being seen is so much higher in this kind of a platform. And discoverability and accessibility is the biggest issue with kids podcasting. And we're hoping to address that with this app and the categorization.
Okay. So is it going to be audio only, audio and video?
Yeah.
What are your plans?
Such a good question, because video is becoming more popular and I feel mixed about it because
So do I.
as a parent, I'm like, well, I like podcasts because it's not screen. I mean, there's no
screen time.
Yes.
Right.
Podcasting is one of my best parenting hacks because my kids are entertained and educated without a screen.
Yes.
And they're not glued into a screen. And so, we joke a lot as parents about I call it the screen time monster. When a kid's been watching too much screen time because their brain just turns to mush. And that doesn't happen with podcasts. My daughter can listen to 3 hours of podcasts and she is just as creative and energetic as ever. So the idea of then there being a video attached to the podcast makes me like, wait a minute, what?
Wait.
So I, as a parent, I'm hesitant. But in the industry, I have talked to several people and they talk about how they would like to incorporate video. And like I talked to one podcaster out of Mexico, and he was saying that in Mexico, that's where a lot of people kind of expect video. Like that's what they're gravitating towards. And he started putting, he has a story podcast and he would upload it to YouTube and he would just include a video of someone drawing and the kids would just trace and follow along and learn how to draw. And so for me, I'm like, oh, I mean, if it's that, then that seems great. So we don't currently have video. We don't have it on our roadmap for the next 6 months to 12 months, but it's definitely in mind. And if we incorporate video, it would have to be something that enhances the education, enhances the listening experience, and doesn't take away from it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
What are you hearing back from parents that are using the app? What kind of feedback have you had?
Yeah, we've had a lot of good feedback. We've had a lot of people who've talked about, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I needed. We have a lot of people who have mentioned, I didn't realize that my kid would like podcasts. And I think that's like the power, right? Is that you've got a lot of people who are super users who are already tapped into podcasting, but there's a lot of kids who don't, and they don't realize that this resource is out there and it's free. I mean, it's just incredible. And so they've realized the magic of listening as a family or giving their kid access to satisfy all their creativity and curiosity in this one medium. Right. I just think it's so powerful. I think about when my family and I first really got hooked on podcasting as a family, and it was during COVID, when all my kids were home and we were homeschooling. And, prior to that, we had listened to some podcasts on and off, but they hadn't become a part of our routine. And in COVID, all of a sudden the world shut down and we were all home together. And so every day at lunch, we would turn on Wow in the World, which is a really popular science podcast for kids. And we just were hooked. And as a family, I just remember that magical moment. We are all engaged in the same content, and we're learning and we're entertained and we're looking forward to it the next day. And that from that moment on, we started incorporating podcasting more into our day-to-day routines. And I think that moment where you realize there's this resource for parents that's free, that your kids will love, that will entertain them. It's just this like ultimate parenting hack, really. So
it's good.
I'm hoping more and more parents access it. And that's what we've heard from a lot of our users, is that they're able to tap into this power more easily.
Okay, so Rachel, there's somebody listening. They're thinking about starting a kids podcast. Yes. They're thinking, how am I going to get found in a sea of podcasts? I'm afraid that I'm going to get lost in the mix. And who's going to care about my kids' podcast? I've got this great idea. But I'm like, it's too much work. I'm always going to hear my show. And there's no good, great kids apps out there. that I know of. And so why would I even try? From your perspective, wanting more kids podcasts for your app, what is your message to a new podcaster debating on the merits of a kids podcast? What would you say to them? How can we encourage them to start their show?
Well, as a mom, I mean, I am all for it. Like anything that can grow and increase our kids' creativity and anything that can contribute to their well-being. I mean, there's so many different areas you can go in with podcasting. It doesn't even have to be just stories. You know, there's game shows and there's science and there's stories, and I just think the options are so wide open. And so if you know, we were talking earlier about like you don't know the impact of your content, and I guess I would say as a mom, I am like forever grateful for podcasters and this beautiful, incredible content that they put out there. My daughter listens to a couple small independent ones, just the same that she listens to the big ones, and they are just as impactful and meaningful for her in helping her grow and create. And I can see where in the industry more emphasis is placed on adults because it's hard to target kids. It's hard to market to kids. It's hard to get their attention. But I'm hoping with our KidsPod app, you'll feel more confident in creating a podcast that will be seen and loved. If you do decide to create one, please reach out to me so I can review it and put it on the platform. And we would love to promote it in any way we can. And I just want to be like the biggest cheerleader for all people who want to make a podcast for kids, because I'm so appreciative of all of the good ones out there. I just say go for it, please.
Do it. Just do it. We need it.
Yeah, and there's certain subjects that probably need it more than others.
Okay.
So one area that's pretty lacking in the kids space is sports content. There's really not a lot of sports shows. There's a few on our platform, but there are quite a few of them are outdated. There's some good ones that are there, but there's just not near as many. So that's a really good one. Another one that we would love to see more of is the tween space. So our app is geared for kids 3 to 13. But a lot of the content is really around the 6 to 9 age. I think we could really use some more tween, you know, that 12, 13, maybe 14 age content for them.
Good.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you're listening, you're like, wait a minute, that's exactly what I was planning to do. And now I have confirmation that Rachel wants my podcast.
Yes.
So I'm good.
Please,
right?
And, and then holidays is another one. We love your podcast. There's not very many Christmas podcasts or holiday podcasts. There's some that are really great, but there's not a ton. So, and that seems like a great one that, you know, it's just seasonal. So it seems like something that would be easier to do, but.
Okay, so you did kind of mention that you review the podcast.
Yes, I do.
So can you kind of walk us through how we get our podcast to you? We send you our information through the website. We make connection with you. What is the steps that go on behind the scenes so that we know we're prepared for giving you what you need to review our podcast? And how does that all work? So that's the behind the scenes stuff that we don't get to talk to app creators very often.
Yeah.
So you are like blowing all of our minds collectively right now. Well, just so you know, everyone has got a paper and a pen. They're like, okay, what do I need to do?
Well,
I love it.
So it's really not that complicated. You just go to KidsPod.app. It's the website, and you can go to the podcasters page, and from there you can submit your podcast. So you'll just need the title of your podcast. You'll need your RSS feed, and then a little brief description of your show. And then I think you can also include what categories you would like it put into, because I manually put it into all of the different categories. I will then receive that information. I will screen it. I will listen to it. And then I will upload it into our back end, and it will be live. doesn't take very long. Right now, I am currently curating and screening all of the podcasts. In the future,
Wow.
in the future,
Wow.
I have a lot of kids podcasts in my mind. I've listened to so many, which is why I'm so jazzed about it. Cause there's just like, I wish I could just take what's in my mind and put it out there. Like there is such good content. Kids love this stuff. Anyway, in the future, we will be partnering with some companies to scan it and for safety and such to simplify that process. But for now, it's pretty simple. And then I will let you know when it's uploaded and if it's in the correct categories and age ranges. And then, we love to just like cross promote or do whatever we can to push your show.
I love it. Okay, so you're going to get found, which is the biggest thing podcasters are dying to know, is that we're going to get found on an app.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're not competing with everything,
right?
Every other podcast about every other adult thing, whatever, we're just focusing on kids, which is awesome. We're going to have a better chance to be found. And people listen to our show.
Yeah.
Great idea. I know one thing that podcasters are always on the search for is an answer to that question. Stats.
Yes.
How are we going to know if someone's actually listening to our show on your app? Do you report back to our hosting site? Can we get information about how many people press play on our episode on your app? Can you give us any insight to that and maybe what's coming?
Yes, I will answer that. And then I have a question for you about that because that's really interesting. We are very cognizant of that. We are still in the pretty early stages. So right now it doesn't show, we're working on it linking to ours so you can see that it's being played on KidsPod. And then one of the values we hope to bring to podcasters is that piece. We want to bring the stats to you. We want to be able to give podcasters information about their listeners. When are they listening? How long are they listening? What episodes are they listening to over and over or whatever? And so that podcasters can use that to improve. That's, to me, like the analytics behind listening habits is a huge factor. And that's something that we really hope podcasters get on board with because we want to like team up with you and be able to help you with this information. So we plan on sharing and creating a podcaster database essentially and sending out newsletters to share some of the stats that we are finding. And similar to like some of the gaps we're seeing, some of the spaces where you could fill that there's, like I said, like there's not enough sports podcast, let's fill that spot.
Great.
So we're hoping to be able to fill that. But I would ask you as a podcaster and as someone who has a kids podcast, what kind of stats would really benefit you? What would you really want to know as far as the analytics?
Okay, again, a lot of analytics is kind of a shot in the dark because we really don't know for concrete number. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a guide. It's kind of guardrails, maybe like on the highway, keeps you on the road, but doesn't let you fall off the road. It's kind of there as a guide rail. Yeah. That's how I look at stats. So for me, I like to know listen time.
Yeah.
So if my podcast is way too long and people are not finishing the podcast, then I can readjust, maybe make my episode shorter, or that's learning that I can include for future episodes. Knowing where my people listen is so cool. Okay. That's such a rewarding thing. I just took for one of my podcasts, it's Living the Next Chapter. It's an author podcast. And I was able to take a dump of all of my location IDs. So it tells me the city, the province or state, and the region and the country. And I was able to drop that into a Google map as a mass dump of all of the addresses. And then it did pins all around the world of everyone listening to my show. And it was the most amazing moment because I could scroll in and I could see in Bangladesh that someone's listening to my show. Screen out, go over to Iceland. Oh, there's people listening to my show in Iceland. I'm like, what? And then I'm over in Egypt, and then I'm over in the U.S., and I'm in Mexico. It's the best feeling.
Yeah, that's cool.
To kind of get some kind of guardrails to go, wow, people are listening to the show. So that's one that I find quite enjoyable. Now, again, I can have a VPN and tell you that I'm in Scotland when I'm actually in Canada. So you can't really rely on it too much, but it does give you a good picture of the world. So listen time, location is great. And I guess just some idea of how many times the episode has been listened to. Mm-hmm. That's also important to me because then again, I get to know that there's some traction here. And then I'm going to do more kids podcasts, and more episodes. I love that. Right? That helps me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating because kids are funny little creatures. Their listening habits are different than adults.
Good point.
Kids will listen. Yeah. I mean, my son, I have a 6-year-old who's autistic, who he hears a lot of podcasts in the house because my daughter plays them all the time. And he has fallen in love with Melon's House Party, which is a darling little story podcast. It's got a lot of singing. Well, he loves the songs. So he will just play it for the song. So he'll listen to the same episode over and over and over. And I think that he's unique, but I know that that's the case for a lot of kids. You know, my co-founder, she was telling a story about how her son listens to the same episode. It's this episode about grass, like the history of grass, every night, fall asleep. And it's just the same one over and over. And most adults are not listening to the same show over and over. Where kids' content can just be evergreen. It can be listened to over and over and over.
Good point.
Even if they've already heard it. I mean, my daughter has listened to her favorite podcast is Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt. And she has listened to every episode probably 10 times. And I will put a plug in here because I'm so fascinated by this model. R.A. Spratt is an author, and she has written a ton of books. And she has taken some of her content from her books, put it into a podcast, and sold my daughter. I mean, she has listened to every single story, and now we have since purchased 5 of her audiobooks. And for Christmas, she's getting 5 more print books. I mean, that's the power. I'm like, she has hooked her, and she's a brilliant author, so it works. But that I wish more children's authors would get into podcasting and sell their listeners on their stories, and then they will jump to other platforms, right? That has been powerful. I mean, here's one more example. There's a new podcast Wondery put out called Cat in the Hat. It's a little kid podcast, darling little stories about Cat in the Hat. Well, my daughter listened to it. And we were in Costco a week or so later, and she saw a Cat in the Hat book, which Cat in the Hat has been around for decades. Yeah. But it's like it just hit her. She was like, Mom, Cat in the Hat has a book. Like, let's buy this book. It's the same as the podcast. And I am like, this is where I wish more authors would get into podcasting. But I do have a question for you, actually, in thinking about podcasters. When you think about a platform and an app like ours, we really would love to build out a better backend for podcasters so that you can see those kind of stats easier. You can control kind of how your page is formatted on the app. Right now, it's pretty rudimentary, but we're hoping to get to this level. Another thing I would love is, how do you feel about engaging with your listeners? Do you ever get messages from kids? Because kids are so engaged and they are like super fans. And I've talked to a lot of podcasters who are like flooded with messages and drawings and pictures, which is wonderful. But right now there's not a really great way to go about it. And we would love to, in a safe way, obviously, create a place where kids can send messages to podcasters from the platform or something like that to create greater engagement. So when you think about having a ideal platform for you to engage with your audience, what would you like to see?
So the whole world around kids and social media in relation to a podcast is very kind of murky, right? Because if I go create a Instagram page for the Daily Santa podcast, parents are a little leery. They're like, who is this?
Yeah, it's tricky.
Do I trust my kids to be interacting with a stranger on social media? I don't know who this really is. Yeah. I trust the podcast because it comes through your app and I know they're vetted. So I have faith in what you do. But some stranger on the internet, I'm a little leery about letting my 6-year-old have interaction with them. So
right. Well, and most kids aren't
right?
accessing social media. Right. Like,
Right.
and that's,
But they grab your phone or their whatever.
yeah. Which is hard because that's like how else are podcasters supposed to get their message out and share that there's been a new episode or whatever.
So in the safety of your app and the safety of your website, you have a unique opportunity to, because the parents have already trusted you, to build something within that community that where you could open the door for communication. So one of the things I have on all of my websites is a thing called SpeakPipe. Mm-hmm. And it's a free way for people to leave me a voice message. And I love it because I get messages from around the world. It's free for the person that records the message. It's an audio-only message. There's no video. And all it takes is an email address and a name. So it could be done by a parent on behalf of their children. And they're just recording a voice message. It could be on your phone, whatever. But you're just recording a message. And the free version is 90 seconds long. And then they cut you off in 90 seconds. So anybody can have it. I put it on my website, and I get great interaction from people in Puerto Rico. I'm in Canada, America, UK. It's amazing. So that's one way to get that information. And for me as a podcaster, that means more to me personally than a number.
Yeah.
If somebody reaches out to me and says, Dave, your Daily Santa podcast is fun and exciting, and I can't wait for the next episode, and I'm calling in from Turkey, I don't know, that like, wow, that just lights
cool.
me up as a podcaster because now I'm hearing a voice.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I bring those voices into my podcast.
Yeah.
Because now I get to hear, and then, mind blown, the children listening to the podcast push play on the next episode, and guess who's there?
Yeah. Oh, so cool.
You are.
Oh, so cool. Yeah.
It's like my voice on my favorite podcast.
Yes.
Like to be on that author podcast and hear your child's voice.
So cool.
As a little thing at the end, kind of like, hi, from so-and-so. I live in this area of the world. I just want to say thank you. I love your podcast. That's it.
Yeah.
But to have that in the content is like, I'm telling the world, I'm on my favorite podcast. My voice is there.
Yeah.
It's the best moment.
It really is.
So any kind of interaction like that that you could build into your community would be so beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea. My daughter has done one or two of those where I've had to submit, and it's a little bit, I don't want to say cumbersome. There's just a couple hurdles, and I have to go to this website and then send it here, which is fine. And she, was beyond thrilled to hear herself in a podcast. I mean, that was just like so magical. So that is incredibly powerful. And I would love to be able to incorporate that within the app itself. I am cognizant that we have to be aware that kids, I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked at the rate, like the Apple reviews for some kids podcasts. I mean, kids just leave like emoji, just like messages are just like, they're cute, but also like not super helpful. Yeah. So I think we would have to have some kind of a gatekeeping on there. Maybe the parent has to review it or something, but I love the idea of that being an easier way for kids to send messages or answer questions or, there's some shows that are trivia or whatever, and they're asking questions and they can submit their answer and then it can be played on the next episode. There's just, the possibilities are wide open. That interactivity, that's amazing. And to be able to have that back and forth. Yes, and obviously we have to keep safety involved, and it all has to be through the parent. And so I feel a little bit leery about having podcasters contact kids, obviously, so we won't be doing that. But right. I do love the idea of podcasters contacting, or kids contacting the podcasters through the app, whether we have a parent approval or it goes through the email or whatever, we will work that. But that's definitely on our roadmap, and that's something that we have heard from multiple podcasters that would be very helpful. So we would like to work on that. Or maybe a kid's review of a program on your app. Yeah. Where they call in and they give their favorite podcast, and they have a kids section where they give their top 10. Oh, that'd be so now cute. It's the kids rating with their voices saying, my favorite podcast is the blah, blah, blah podcast, and my favorite episode is number 30. Yay! Oh, that's cute. Yeah, I would love that. And then it's like the kids get to hear other kids talk about the podcast and go, wait a minute, I've never pressed play on that episode. It's nothing to do with adults.
It's all kid-based.
Yeah, that's a great
And the kids
idea.
reviewing the podcast, it's kind of like the movie reviews back in the day, where you press play on a movie review and go, do I want to watch that movie? Some critic is going to tell me if they liked it or loved it. And, okay, I'm in. So if a kid tells me, as a fellow kid, my age, that this is the best podcast they've ever heard,
Yeah.
pretty likely I'm going to be able to press play on that. And if somehow we had vision or the opportunity to be notified that we've been nominated or reviewed, or that would be enough for me as a podcaster without interaction directly with my listener to know that I'm being talked about on your app by a kid, by a listener. Holy cow, that would be the best moment ever.
Yeah,
because I don't get that anywhere else.
Yeah, I love that idea so much. That's great. That's a great idea. The other thing that's made me remember is another feature we're hoping to incorporate as we get more users. We just need more users, but the podcast or the app will recommend, similar to how Netflix recommends based on your listening or your watching. We are working to incorporate those analytics so that if your kid is listening to one show, it should pop up other things that they would also enjoy, that kids who like this show also like this show. And so hopefully that will just keep your kid engaged and keep jumping around. Because I think unfortunately some families or some kids will listen to one podcast, for example, and say, like my kids, they didn't like it. They don't really like podcasts. And they tried one or two. And I think that's so sad because there are literally hundreds of options. There's something for everyone. You just got to keep trying. So we're hoping to quicken the time when a kid starts and when they get hooked, and keep the cycle going where they just keep finding really great educational content.
So one other question for you. How are you getting podcasts in front of people who have zero clue what a podcast is and how it can benefit their children? I think we need more podcast listeners in podcasting, where we have a world that people who know what it is, and then there's a bigger world of people who have zero clue of the power of podcasting for a parent.
Right.
How are you expanding your reach about KidsPod beyond the podcasting community into the world of the unknown and bringing new listeners to the app? What are you doing?
See, that's the hard part. We see it as kind of a two-pronged marketing strategy where we have that first layer of people who are already listeners, and they're a little bit easier because they are early adapters. They are already listening, and we can advertise to them on kids' podcasts. That second layer of kids who aren't already engaged or families who don't know about the medium, they're a little bit trickier. So we're taking a couple different approaches and we're going to kind of see what sticks. But we are partnering with some pretty large influencers to try and create some playlists to get kids, to get their followers engaged. We are connecting with some teachers to see if we can incorporate it more in the classroom or as part of the education process. We're trying to work with some after-school programs, and as well as getting it in some of the devices inside hospitals. So just like a lot of places where kids, have access to a device, but don't necessarily want screen time. And so that's our model right now. In the future, obviously, once we get more funding, we can do a bigger marketing push and just do a lot of ads and things like that. But for now, we have to get creative. And so we're trying to partner with brands and influencers.
Good. Awesome. Yeah, the more people we bring into the medium, the better, I think.
Totally.
And I think that's amazing. So what do we need to do then today to get our podcast in there again? Let's remind everybody.
Yeah.
We have a show. Maybe it's already listed in all the big shots. They have our episodes, but we want them to be sure they're on your podcast app.
Yes.
Go there and search and see if we're there already.
There.
It might be, right?
It might be. I have tried to just pull any public RSS feed that is for kids, and I've put it on the app. A lot of the people I tried to contact, but there's 600, so I may have skipped a few, but see if it's on the app already. And if not, go to our website, KidsPod .app, and submit it.
Amazing. Anything else we didn't cover that we really need to cover for your app? Because you have the attention of podcasters around the world who are freaking out right now that they're going to be coming to you right now.
Oh, I hope they do. I hope
anything else you want to say to them?
I guess I would just say that me and my co-founder, Jessica, we're two moms who have podcast obsessed kids. And we just saw a lot of hurdles. And so we're just trying to solve the problem of discoverability and accessibility in the best way we know how. And we hope that all podcasters can see that and that we are genuinely trying to just improve the listening experience for everyone. And hopefully that increases all podcasters listening and downloads. And if the goal is to make money, then that can increase your, ad spend. That's one thing I didn't say. We are ad supported. So we do not remove ads. We keep all podcasters ads. We're very supportive of podcasters making money and using ads. We would love, even in the future, to be able to work on connecting podcasters with brands, because we feel passionately that podcasters should get paid and should make money for their content. So whatever way we can help, the better. But ultimately, our goal is to connect all kids everywhere with the power of podcasting, and hopefully that raises all podcasters up as we go.
Now, I mentioned to you when we had our pre-chat that there's one person I really want you to talk to over at Pod News, James Cridland in Australia.
Yeah.
Because he is one of my favorite go-to people in the world who talks podcasting and
he's
brings people into the medium and celebrates amazing people doing great things like you. So I need you on that show because that's going to blow the doors open on what you do and put you in front of the world. So James, if you're listening, and you better be, you need to get this KidsPod app on your podcast. Please.
Yeah, we would love to be on his podcast. My partner has chatted with him, and he is incredible, and he's been so kind and helpful. We would love to be on his podcast. And he's brought up, there's a lot of things that we need to be aware of, especially when talking about a global audience. And when you talk about kids, there's certain countries you can't advertise to kids. And so we have to get creative about localizing the app or what we need to do to get it globally. But we are planning on doing that and doing everything we can to get it out there for everyone. And yes, we're so grateful for Pod News and all the information that is shared there. That's like our favorite source of information every day.
Your second favorite, because this
obviously, besides your show.
Shameless plug, insert here.
No need to say.
It's so great to have you on the podcast. And again, I am proud to be one of your podcasts on your app. That makes me so happy.
We're so happy to have you.
I'm following with such anticipation.
Thanks.
You have an amazing idea. The two of you are amazing people, and you represent a need for parents and kids. And the insights you've given us today, I can think of kids in their tweens that want to have a podcast for their group.
Yes.
They could be on your podcast app doing a podcast, and they are their own audience.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many opportunities here.
Yeah, there's some really great kid-hosted shows. Yeah.
I love it. And then the fact that you feature your podcast and you feature your creators. I'm learning about new podcasts that I would love to have come on my show and celebrate them. So, I'm excited to learn more about the kids podcasting space and to have someone leading the way like you are, the two of you. I'm just so thrilled that we have this connection.
Yeah.
And I would love to get updates in the future if you are interested and would ever like to come back and big things launch or big announcements.
Cool, yes.
If I could be one of those humble podcasts where we can celebrate with you, I would love to have you back.
That would be wonderful. I'm so appreciative of you taking the time and being excited for us. It's such a rocky up and down road of just starting this and feeling like, is this going to go anywhere? And then feeling so excited and then feeling like, it's so exhausting. But to hear your enthusiasm, it makes me excited. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to get to know our product and to share about it. And we would love to stay in contact. And I will be creating my podcast, so I will be reaching out for support, I'm sure.
Celebrating, I'm clapping. Do you have, one last thing, do you have a commercial for your app, similar to what would be on the radio between songs? Because I would love to insert that into my podcast.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to promote you guys.
We don't at the moment because we just haven't had the funding. But that's something, again, on our radar for the next little sprint here. So
I will help you for free.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay.
See, that's where we're like.
So just so you know, I have my hand up.
We don't know anything about like recording and engineering. And like, we are so naive when it comes to actually recording shows and doing this. So, that would be amazing.
Okay. Please. I would love to help you with that. That would be wonderful. That'd be a joy for me. And then I get to promote it on my 7 different podcasts.
Oh, that would be amazing. Because I have 7 different shows.
So I'm in front of a big audience of different listeners around the world.
Yes.
And if I can push you out and promote you through my community, I know people will be loving your app.
That would be
And the more
amazing.
we can spread it, the better. And I already have people that I would love for you to meet. So this is a great connection, and I'm thrilled. I get goosebumps. I'm excited
that makes me so happy.
to be with you guys, and again, to be on your app is an honor. So thank you for accepting my little show.
Oh no, my gosh, you've been so generous. Thank you. We will take all of the love and support we can, and it's just so humbling. I am so great. There's so many good people, and podcasters are just this unique good people, and I just am so grateful for you, and just thank you.
Amazing. So the website again?
KidsPod.app. I'm pretty sure. KidsPod.app. Yes, KidsPod.app.
Everything's in the show notes, everyone. Go there, download it, first of all.
Yes.
Leave a review on the app.
Please leave a review and send us any feedback. We are still working out the best. We're constantly looking for feedback on how the app is running and what you would like to see in features. So send us any feedback you have. Our contact information is on the website.
As a parent, as a podcaster, the feedback's always accepted, always wanted. It's great to hear back from the people using the app. And again, I can't wait for the updates you couldn't tell us about.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those. Whatever they are, they're going to be great because the app's already awesome. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. Go download the app today. Even if you're not a kid, go download the app and leave a review. You need to do that.
I mean, well, yes, that would be wonderful. But my mom has downloaded it because she's a grandma and she likes to turn on a show in the car when she's driving grandkids. Like,
come on.
It's for everyone. Caregivers, grandparents, parents, kids. It's a whole family thing. So
it's the best new app that everyone needs today.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Done. Awesome. Everyone go check out the show notes. Everything's there. And please, if you have any questions for Rachel and her team, reach out. They're quick to answer. Awesome to work with. The best app ever. There you go. Done. Go there and download it today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for making time, Rachel.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So thanks for being part of the How to Podcast family. Really appreciate you being here. Coming back for episode after episode. And to those super How to Podcast family members, you know who you are. You went back to episode 1. And you've listened to now many episodes of the How to Podcast series. Thank you. I have 2 things to ask you to do today. Whether this is your first time here, thank you, by the way, for joining us, or you've been here for a long, long time. Thank you to you as well. I would love for you to share this show with someone in the podcasting community that doesn't know about this podcast at all. And let them know about the How to Podcast series and give them a suggestion of an episode to listen to. Give them a number, send them there. Number 2, I would really, really love to connect with you. So, howtopodcast.ca is my website. howtopodcast.ca, because that's a Canadian website and I'm in Canada. howtopodcast.ca, and go over there and leave me a voice message on my speak pipe. You'll see it there, and I would love to hear from you, to hear your amazing podcaster voice, and include you in a future episode. I'll bring in your message and play it for the world, and they can hear about your show and connect with you as another fellow How to Podcast family member. So I would love to meet with you and hear your voice at howtopodcast.ca. Keep podcasting, keep doing the thing, hit record, and get your message into the world. Can't wait to hear your show. Thanks for listening. Take care.